Welcome. This will be a lecture on Dr. Earl Grant. Unfortunately, I don't have much content to be able to dig into because a lot of his interviews were lost deliberately and withheld from the public. It's a conspiracy, actually. A shame, really. But I have managed to gather a few things I was able to get from documentaries and interviews. Dr. Earl Grant was known as the archivist of Malcolm X. He recorded his speeches, and he passed away recently. He has a very tragic story because he held the trauma of Malcolm X's death forever. He felt guilt over what happened to him, that he could have done something to stop it. But he was a very honorable man. I just wish that he didn't allow himself to be controlled over his interviews because he gave so much great information that it's lost forever. But we're gonna go through some of his words because this is a man that worked with Malcolm, and this is a man that knew the game. So let's get started with this. And a lot of this comes from his interview with Gil Noble and some other interviews. So Gil Noble asked him, "Do you anticipate running into anybody close to this caliber man, Malcolm X, in the rest of your life?" Earl Grant, "No. It only happens once in a while. Like we had a Toussaint down there in Haiti. We had a John F. Kennedy. You look at Washington today, and there's no replacement for him. These people only happen every now and then, and that's interesting. You had a young white man and a young black man who tried to make the kind of changes that this country needs, and they were both eliminated. Then you had the man of peace, Dr. King, eliminated. So that tells you that the people who run this show don't plan on making any changes anyway." Gil Noble, "You think there's a connection between those assassinations and the people who run this show, as you say?" Earl Grant, "Absolutely." Another quote by Earl Grant. People in this country in general are known for not knowing very much about the past. They have to understand, especially this young generation of black people, that a lot of these people with their NBA and their sports cards and their corporate vice presidencies, they have to know that they're not there just because of the way the way they wear their clothes or the way they part their hair. Somebody paved the way for them to get there, and that they owe some debts. They have a responsibility to history and to do something else rather than just cash checks every week. They have a role to play. They have a people to serve. Unless they do that, as George Santayana said, people who don't understand the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. You've got a lot of our younger people coming out of these schools and going into these corporations. They think they're another corporate figure. Well, that's not so. No way, that's not so. They're only there because somebody paved the way in. And like those kids down in the South, that church that was blown up, like the preachers down there that were trying to get people to register to vote, that were killed, Dr. King being killed, Medgar Evers. This younger generation needs to have it burned into their brain how they got to where they are, and that the road was not easy, and that they are not in heaven. That's one of the main problems. They think they're in heaven now, but they're not. They're still here. They got a long way to go. There's this book entitled The Choice. There's an article in there where he talks about a study in 1970 by the U.S. Navy. What would be the attitude of white people in this country if black folks were beginning to be systematically suppressed like the Jews were in Germany? And the study pointed out that most white people wouldn't care. That's a horrifying thought for me. To conduct a study like that in this country is scary. But that was the conclusion of it. If they started rounding up black folks and started making them disappear from the city, most people wouldn't care. That's what the study said. And this is scary because this is back in the 70s. And today in the 2020s, people just care even less. That's a scary study. So Gil Noble says, "Do you regret your years with Malcolm?" Earl Grant, "Not a single day, not 1 second. None of the brothers do. It was the best thing that ever happened to us." Gil Noble, "What was it about him that made you willing to lay down your life for him?" Earl Grant, "Well, for one thing, he was honest. He never lied. If he ever said anything to you, you could bet on it. And he was sincere in what he was trying to do. And I guess I never really thought about things like that. We didn't take the time out to think about things like that. We had something to do and we did it. Just a few of us. Luke, myself, Brother John, Brother Ivory, and he starts crying. Gil Noble, what is it that hurts you so when you talk about those days? Earl Grant, and this is a very, very important thing that he said right here. It was a chance to really be somebody. This country doesn't allow black males to mature. It allows them to grow up physically, but not to mature mentally, intellectually, and spiritually. And Malcolm gave black men that chance in this country. It's a beautiful quote. A beautiful quote that I'm pretty sure most people didn't even understand. Next quote. Maybe it will inspire some of these young people to learn about Malcolm, find out what he was trying to do, and to continue the struggle because that's the best thing that they can do to help themselves. To learn the strict discipline he had, the toughness of mind, not to be taken off by all the negative attractiveness of this society. The drugs, this noise that people call disco. Oh, that was the 70s, man. If only you knew. He knew, by the way. He knew. He must have known. And all of the other deceptions that you find in this country. Discipline. Almost nobody has discipline. That's so tragic. People need to learn what discipline means. Anyhow, these kids have really got to, the ones that are still capable of doing it, really begin to turn themselves around and look inward for inner strength. Because there's nothing outside. Your strength comes from inside. It comes from understanding who you are and what you're about. From an interview. So anyways, next quote. When you understand that everyone dies, that nobody lives forever, then people can't threaten you. You can only be threatened if you're dumb enough to think you can live forever. Then people can threaten you. When you know that everybody out there in the cemetery is dead, ain't no live people out there, that they're all dead, then people can't threaten you. You can look a man in the eye and tell them to go to hell. And that was our attitude. We were going to hold his funeral, Malcolm X's. We didn't care what anybody thought. Yeah, when it came to Malcolm X's funeral, his followers made sure that went down the way it was supposed to. That's a whole nother video that's a whole nother story for a whole nother video. So more quotes from Earl Grant that I found. It's a tough world. It's a risky world. You have to take chances. Things belong to people who grab at them. You can't just sit back and wait for things to happen for you. The whole existence of black people in this country has been a struggle from day one. And what little progress we have made has been because somebody made it happen. It isn't because of the way we part our hair. That's not the reason. Somebody had to make it happen. We knew time was running out, even before the bombing of his house. We'd be standing out there on 125th Street in front of chock full of nuts, and Joseph, the captain from down there, used to come driving over in a station wagon they had. They had Norman Butler sitting in the right seat right by him. He'd point us out to Butler. He came out there one day and he's pointing at us, and I walked right over to him and said, "Make sure you get a good look and don't make no mistakes." And he started smiling and drove off. Another time they came around in a car. We were coming out of the hotel with Malcolm. They pulled right up in front of the Teresa Hotel. I walked right up to them. He said something. I just looked at him and I said, "You make sure you get a good look at me. You just have to let people know that you'll scramble their eggs if you have to." From time to time, rare people are born. There are people who stand out in history, and they seem to personify all of the hopes and aspirations of a whole nation of people. It appears in one human being, and when that person appears, they have to support him because he can't do it alone. He, Malcolm X, was a historic figure. He was a holy man. That's one of the reasons he's not alive today. If he hadn't been so pure and kept us and a lot of other people that way, we could have kept him alive longer. But we were never allowed to touch anybody unless in defense. He would not permit it. He was really a holy man. He was too clean to be kept alive in this country. I learned how to listen. Don't try to out-talk everybody around you. Keep your mouth closed and let them talk. They'll tell you what they want you to know. And if you can get them to keep on talking, they'll tell you things that they don't want you to know. That's one way you conduct your intelligence gathering. You want to make people talk, and you have to be quiet and listen. And the more you do it, the better you become at it. And this one's from a more recent interview from 2012. Question: I heard you say we are worse today than we were back then. Earl Grant. We were in a much better state 100 years ago. We knew more about ourselves and knew more about the world. You find black folks now, like just the general population, just falling for this facade they have in the White House. That's got nothing to do with us. He's talking about Obama. He's talking about Obama. The person in there was put in there by other people for their reasons. He never represented us. In fact, the fact is, you can't blame him because he never even said he represented us. Question. You can't be saying that because we're in the 21st century. Obama is here for us. For those who are listening, what do you mean he's not there for us? Or Grant. The average American does not know how the presidency operates. They don't know how a person gets into the White House. They think a thing called the popular vote puts a person in the White House. That's not true. There's something called the electoral college, and that's who elects the president of this country, not the popular vote. The popular vote is just there to keep people confused. And he had one more quote that I forgot to put in, but I remember it, where he said, when it comes to... Earl Grant used to say, when it comes to reality, don't see it the way that you want to see it. See it the way that it is. Do not live in a fantasy. Face the reality, no matter how painful it is. He was a strong man, a very conscious man. May he rest in peace. And hopefully one day his interviews might resurface. But I feel bad for Earl Grant because he was so broken by the assassination. He never recovered. He had the shakes. But he had some very great things to say, and this is all I can find by him. I don't think anybody can find anything else unless people finally put out his interviews. That's what I have. So rest in peace, Dr. Earl Grant.